Welcome everyone to our Cook with OC program today. My name is Tracie Napoli, Director of Fund Development and MARCOM at Osteoporosis Canada, and I will be your host. Before we begin, Osteoporosis Canada acknowledges the land that our offices located in Toronto are on is the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabeg, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples, and is now home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis. We also acknowledge that Toronto is covered by Treaty 13 with the Mississaugas of the Credit. Thank you for joining us. So for today's webinar, we want to thank Get Cracking for their partnership with this cooking demo webinar. Now, if you have questions, we want to hear from you today. You can click the Q&A icon at the bottom of your screen, or even put it in the chat, and we will try to get to as many questions as we can in the allotted time. Now, this cooking demo will provide general information about cooking and food knowledge. It's not intended as individualized health or nutrition advice, but if you have questions about nutrition, you should consult a physician or registered dietitian. Nutrition is a key component for strengthening and maintaining healthy bones, as well as in the prevention and management of osteoporosis. Now, we are working to provide strategies, new ideas, and develop recipes like the one featured today to help you get the bone-building nutrients needed for bone health. And Osteoporosis Canada recommends that whenever possible to get calcium and protein through food sources. Did you know that eggs are an excellent source of protein and contain healthy fats and many nutrients like vitamins A, D, E, choline, iron, and folate? Eggs are the featured ingredient in today's cooking demo. Now, eggs are also one of the few foods that naturally contain vitamin D, and that's necessary for bone health as it aids in the absorption of calcium. Osteoporosis Canada recommends that routine vitamin D supplementation for Canadian adults is for year-round. However, adding vitamin D enhanced foods like eggs and milk, which is fortified with vitamin D to your diet, is another great way to increase your intake. If you're looking for other recipes featuring eggs, green bean carbonara, where each serving has 34 grams of protein and 400 milligrams of calcium. We also featured this in a previous cooking demo. It's all available on the website at osteoporosis.ca. We wanted to address a couple of questions before we got into the cooking demo, and this has been a common one. Are white and brown eggs different? Well, aside from the color of the eggshell, there's really little difference between brown and white eggs. The eggshell color depends on the breed of hen. So generally, white shells come from hens with white feathers, while brown shell eggs are produced by hens with brown feathers. Nutritionally, both brown and white eggs are identical unless the feed has been enhanced for specialty eggs such as omega-3. And of course, eggs are a quick and easy, delicious way to help meet our protein needs. 2 large eggs contain 13 grams of protein. So today we are featuring green eggs and ham bagels, and each serving has 350 milligrams of calcium with 31 grams of protein. Now this recipe again and all our other recipes are available at osteoporosis.ca/recipes. I will also pop the recipe in the chat. I would now like to welcome our cooking demo host, Emily Richards, who's a professional home economist, freelance food writer, chef, and is the author and co-author of 10, which actually it's 11 cookbooks. We will update that. Emily also writes and develops recipes for print and online publications that include everyday cooking and healthy eating and can be found on radio and webcasts, just like this one. So welcome to Emily.
Thanks, Tracie. Hey, everybody. It's so good to be here. It's nearing the end of the week, and I'm thinking that my fridge is getting a little bit empty. But you know what I have? Eggs. Right, Tracie?
Absolutely. The easy go-to ingredient.
And I'm excited about this recipe because as we've been preparing to showcase this recipe, I had actually a few emails come in about some questions, and the big one is make ahead, because that's always a popular question. And we're going to address all of those today. and chat a little bit about eggs in general and how useful they are and how nutritional they are. But Tracie usually has a few words to say before I get started because she has a prize.
I do. And it just occurred to me, I always hold the one up, in the package that we get, but Emily's modeling it. So we have another unbreakable apron that we're going to give away. So if you're on the webinar today and you're on at the end and I pick your name, we will ship this lovely, which is kind of, it's better if you look at Emily. She's all decked out. But we're really excited about this recipe, and it's all about versatility, ease, nutrition, and the ability to make substitutions wherever you feel that you want to make them. So let's get cracking, Emily.
I was waiting for you to say it.
I know, had to say it.
Well, this recipe is great. And the fact that, Tracie brought up substitutions and just recipes in general, when it comes to that, it's usually what we have at home. I have the recipe here in front of me. This is something that I always do. If you are someone who likes to use your computer or your laptop and work from the recipe virtually that way, you totally can. But I'm definitely a paper person because I already got a stain on it. So that's usually what ends up happening. So looking at the recipe and kind of going over it is for a couple of reasons: to get that inspiration to make the dish, but also to find out if you have those ingredients at home. Now, I don't know about you, but in my fridge, I always have eggs. White eggs, brown eggs, omega-3 eggs, whatever's on sale eggs. And the great part about these fresh eggs is that they usually get from farm to the grocery store in 3 to 7 days. So they truly are farm fresh eggs. And in our recipes, we use large eggs. So we specify that. And typically in most North American recipes, large eggs is what's called for. But you do want to kind of make sure that you check that ingredient list to see, is it an extra large egg or medium egg that they could be calling for? Because they are weighed out so that they do fit the need for that. Now, as we're working through this recipe, if you have any questions, please put them in the Q&A and Tracie will let me know and we can answer them. We can chat about them. Or maybe you have some suggestions on how to create eggs a little bit fun and exciting. We think this is fun and exciting. Perhaps you haven't made eggs this way, so let's talk about it. Let's get cracking, as Tracie said, and we are going to crack those eggs first and foremost. So I have brown eggs, I have white eggs, and they are still in the container that I purchased them in. So this really protects the eggs when you pick them up at the grocery store. They're typically near the dairy section of the grocery store. And then when you get home, you're going to put them in the fridge. I know that's a question often that comes up is, do I keep my eggs in the refrigerator? Yes, you do want to keep them in the refrigerator because they go through a cleaning process so that we get those beautiful fresh eggs, and then they need to be stored in the fridge because that kind of removes that outer coating that protects them. But if you have your own chickens at home, you can keep those eggs and typically at room temperature. But when you're purchasing them in the grocery store, get them in the fridge and keep them cold. So I'm going to crack them. I'm going to use, just to show you the non-difference, I'm going to use 3 brown eggs. Okay? And I am using large eggs today. And I got a little bit of shell in there, which I'm not too worried about because I'm just going to take this little shell here and scoop it out. And it's out. So there's my 3 brown eggs. And then I'm going to use 3 white eggs. Now, if you're wondering, is the yolk color going to be different? It's not. Okay. Typically, you'll see a difference if the eggs are from a different province, for example, because they are fed differently, or if those eggs are omega-3 eggs, because sometimes once the chickens have that little bit of flax in the feed, it can change the yolk color a little bit. But look at that, 6 eggs in there, no difference. Okay, so that's where we're starting, and we're going to add a little bit of flavor. So eggs are fabulous because literally in about 30 seconds, you can have a great hit of protein. So if you're kind of feeling sluggish or low, and you just need a quick little snack, cooking up an egg, whether it's scrambled, over easy, or however you like it, it's just a great way to kind of feel that little bit of a boost. I'll let you in on a little secret, not so secret really, but my son had his wisdom teeth out yesterday, so you have to have soft food. And one of the great kind of rebuilds was, upon his request, were cheesy eggs. So not only did he get that protein in there, he got the calcium. because I put cheese in them as well. And it was a great kind of comfort food. And that's what I always think of when I think of using eggs, especially, in the morning, or in this case, could be lunch or dinner or even a snack. So I'm going to use a little bit of garlic powder. And garlic powder is different than garlic salt. So we don't want to add more salt to this because we already have a little bit of salt going in. But if you only have garlic salt, you can definitely use it. Just omit the salt in the recipe so that you're not kind of over seasoning, because it could be quite a big hit. And if you're wondering, why am I not using fresh garlic? You totally can, but I wanted this to be kind of a pantry friendly recipe so that you can kind of go through your spice cupboard and get creative. So if you don't have garlic powder, maybe you love curry powder, you can use a little bit of curry powder in here, or even a dried herb mix like Italian seasoning or herb de Provence. Really change it up and have that wonderful flavor to the eggs. All right, so I'm going to add my little bit of salt and some pepper in here too. Now, if you really want to spice things up, you can even add some hot pepper flakes in here, which would be absolutely delicious. Now, if you're starting to think, okay, you've talked about protein, what about this calcium? Well, we're going to start with a little bit of milk. Okay, so I'm just going to add a little bit of milk into the eggs, and we whisk that together. And I often actually add a little bit of milk to my eggs before I scramble them, just a tablespoon or two. And I'm just going to whisk these together to break up the yolks and kind of get a nice even consistency throughout. And if you don't have a whisk, you can always just use a fork to break them up. Okay? I don't think my grandmother had a whisk for a long time. She always used a fork. All right, there is our egg mixture. Okay, now the other thing I wanted to show you, I kept one of my eggs from my last dozen, and it had this little imprint on the egg here. So some eggs, you'll see that they have this little stamp on them, which is kind of like a best before date on it. So you could always check that out. But really, you can keep eggs. I know sometimes they get lost in the back of the refrigerator. You can keep them as long as they're refrigerated for a long time afterwards. And all you have to do is put them in some water and see if they float or if they don't. So it really just changes the freshness of the egg. And they're still edible. So don't worry about that part. All right, spinach. We want some color and we wanted to make it green. So we also wanted to add a little bit of texture. Believe it or not, spinach will add a little bit of texture to it. And I'm using baby spinach. So if you're wondering in the recipe, if you took a look at it and it says chopped baby spinach, why would I chop it? It's baby spinach. Well, it is baby spinach, but some leaves are really, really tiny and some are fairly large. Okay, so by chopping it, you're getting a more even consistency. I lost one in there, but that's okay. Now I'll cover it, you can't even see it. So by chopping it, and then they do have these little stems, you'll get a better consistency throughout. Okay, and then when you go to bite it, you don't end up with kind of this big long spinach. I'm sure many of you, maybe you've had that in an omelet or a sandwich where you bite into it and then that spinach just kind of pops right out. So here, by chopping it, it really helps. And I'm measuring them in a dry measuring cup. So it says lightly packed. So what that means is you take some of your chopped baby spinach, which I have here, okay? And then you just kind of lightly pack it in. You're not pushing it in there because that would kind of overload the amount of spinach that goes in. And remember, the spinach has water in it. So it will release into the eggs and we don't want it to be too watery. So that's why we're just doing a nice light pack, okay? So I'm going to add my 3 cups of spinach that I've already measured out here, just like that. And then we are going to also add some cheese. Now, this is, again, creativity, whatever you have in the cheese drawer that you need to get rid of. I love Gouda, and I think it doesn't get used enough. So I'm actually using some Gouda today. This is a mild Gouda. You could use a medium. You could use something a little bit aged for a little bit more flavor. But cheddar would be nice, mozzarella, really any of your favorite grating cheeses would be perfect in here. So I'm adding my 3/4 of a cup right in there. Okay. And I'm going to just start giving this a stir so that everything comes together, just like that. And then I'm going to set this aside. I'm going to add some fresh herbs. So if you notice, I have this beautiful basil here that you could use as an option. Perhaps you still have lots of herbs in the garden that you want to use up, but you could also use something like dill. feel like it sometimes is a little bit underused. And dill is a fabulous one to add lots of fresh flavor. And you are going to get that by using about 3 tablespoons here. So I'm just going to chop up some dill, and I'm just going to remove some of this loveliness and kind of save these tougher stems. You can keep these, you can add them to soup. You could also roast them with some fish or chicken, so you don't have to get rid of them, okay? But I wanted to talk a little bit about, well, actually I wanted to get Tracie to talk a little bit about spinach, because sometimes there is some questions about spinach when we use them in recipes.
Yes,
and
we have two actually.
Oh,
Two
perfect.
questions. Yes.
Awesome.
So the first one I'm going to address is you know, the calcium in spinach. So spinach does have calcium. However, spinach has a high oxalate content. And what that means is that it actually binds the calcium and doesn't let you absorb it. That's the similar thing with Swiss chard, sesame seeds. But spinach has so many other health benefits. We want to put it in there. But when you're looking for the calcium part of it, I mean, if you like bok choy or broccoli, am I right, Emily? You could chop that up and pop that in there. It's whatever you want. So the thing with spinach is it's not a really great source of calcium. I'm just looking at my notes here, but because it's not well absorbed, but it's got other good stuff. So as long as if you're going to replace something like the milk or the cheese, I know people who like to add some beans, like some white beans to their eggs or chickpeas. We love chickpeas here. Always doing things with chickpeas, but that's up to you. And that's where the versatility comes in. So the other question though on spinach was, what if you have frozen spinach? What could we do with that, Emily?
That's a good question. So frozen spinach, you can buy it in, there's a couple ways now you can buy it. The only way you used to be able to buy it was in those little like square or rectangle boxes, which is about 300 grams. And it was cooked, had a lot of little stems in it. You can still get it that way. Or you can buy it in a larger bag, about 500 grams, and they come in kind of little, almost like cubes. They're great for smoothies. So if you're using either of those, you don't actually need the full bag, because 3 cups cooked down. So remember, that's already cooks down to quite a bit. To quite a little. So 3 cups, you're lucky if you might get about 1/3 of a cup of spinach. So just remember that when you're using the frozen spinach, because it's already cooked down. So if you were to add 3 cups of that spinach, it would be very, very green, but it would also not be able to kind of stay together with the eggs and the cheese. So I would use, you could go up to about 1 cup, but anywhere between 1/2 cup and 1 cup of that frozen spinach. It has to be thawed and it has to be squeezed out, okay? But then you can stir it right into the egg and cheese mixture, and then continue on with the recipe. And speaking about other vegetables, so you could use other vegetables. Let's say you roasted some peppers and onions, zucchini. You could use those in there. Make sure that they're chopped a little bit smaller so that they distribute really nicely throughout the egg mixture. You could also roasted potatoes. Who loves eggs and potatoes? I love that. Like, I love making frittata with eggs and potatoes. So you could chop up some potatoes, maybe about only 2 cups, because it is a little bit heavier. But you could add that into the egg mixture. Here's one that I grew up doing, pasta. You can always add pasta to it. So a couple cups of cooked pasta you could add to the egg mixture as well. So just from the simplicity of eggs, like sometimes you just kind of create all these other wonderful, delicious dishes. And you can use the same flavorings too. So I've chopped my fresh dill, and I'm just going to stir that right into there. So about 3 tablespoons is going in, and that's going to give us a lot of fresh flavor. And I have my dill, because I get questions about fresh herbs all the time. And I know it's frustrating, especially when you find them kind of slimy in the back of your fridge. Nobody loves that. So this has been washed and patted dry, and then I keep it in. You can use a clean tea towel if you don't want to use paper towel. And then I just kind of wrap it up. I'm saving those stems at the end for later. Okay, and then just roll this up. And you want to make sure that this paper towel is dry. So each time you go in and check it, If this is really, really wet, unroll it, take a look at it. You could do the same with tea towels and just switch it out to a dry tea towel, because it's really all that moisture that is created in the crisper that starts to deteriorate those herbs. So your herbs will last that much longer. And then I just slip it back into the bag that I purchased it in. But if you had an airtight container, you could use that and keep all your herbs in there. The trick being actually two things. You need to use those fresh herbs and not forget that they're there. So add them to things, even if you're just scrambling eggs, a little sprinkle of fresh dill tastes like a whole new dish. It's absolutely wonderful. Or don't forget about them and wash them first, so that when you go to grab them, you just have to chop them and use them. So you're not kind of, taking that next step. So that really is helpful, I find, so that I can use it more often. All right, I think that made sense. If I didn't, I apologize, because in my head, that all made sense. All right, so the dish that we're using is just an 8-inch square casserole dish. If it's round, that works too. Might just look a little different in the bagel or whatever you're serving it in. So this is just a standard 8-inch baking dish. And I already have my oven turned on. I am using just a little bit of cooking spray to spray it. You could also just use some neutral oil, like canola oil in there, and just so that the eggs don't stick. If you wanted to use butter, you could use that as well, okay? So I'm just gonna stir in that dill and then pour in my mixture, okay? Just like that. So it looks pretty green, and that's the point. We definitely want that green color to come through, okay? There we are. Get the last little bits of spinach in there. And then this goes into the oven. Usually takes about 20 minutes. At 375, I'm just gonna pop it in my oven and turn my timer on, because I have a tendency to forget about it. Perhaps you do the same. And I've already baked one ahead, because this is where we often get lots of questions about make-aheads and things like that. And it's really important to know that you can actually make this ahead. So I made this, I think it's cool now. It's cool enough, okay? So with eggs, they're fabulous, because let's say you made souffle, they rise and they look so gorgeous, and then they kind of deflate a little bit. And that's the wonders of eggs. So when you pull this out, it'll have kind of some nice height. The one thing you want to do is to test for doneness. So you'll see around the edges, it gets a nice little bit of golden color. Definitely if you're using a clear glass dish, you can see that golden color of the eggs at the bottom. But most importantly, you're going to use a small paring knife. Just go into the center and pull that knife out. If it comes out clean, your eggs are done, okay? You might get a little bit of gooiness from the cheese, but it's a definite difference from the moisture of the eggs not being cooked, okay? So anywhere, I like to start checking them about 15 minutes to 20 minutes. If you know that your oven's running a little low, then it might take 25 minutes, but no harm done. Now, we want to get this ready for a sandwich. So I'm going to cut around my edges here just to make sure it's nice and loose, okay? And then I'm going to cut it into 4. Now, why 4? Because we're serving 4, so it's kind of about an egg and a half per person. And the reason is because we're adding another protein element to it. If you wanted to do this vegetarian, you could easily bump this up to 8 eggs if you wanted and go full vegetarian. I'm just going to lift this out so that you can see that you have the beautiful green of the spinach, and then you have that nice layer of the eggs cooked beautifully. And there's no moisture in the pan, so I balanced out that little bit of milk in the egg mixture, so it has a really nice texture and tenderness to the eggs, okay? So I've got those ready to go. And then we're going to talk about the bread. Now, if you can't have gluten, or if you're gluten-free, we haven't added any gluten here. So you could use a gluten-free bun if you want. You could also just put this on a plate and enjoy it in the morning if you wanted to have it on its own with some fresh tomatoes. That would be absolutely lovely. You could have it for lunch. You could serve it with a green salad if you're looking for something on the lighter side. But oftentimes, I know there's a lot of people that perhaps pick up breakfast on the go because it's just easier. And sometimes it's in a bagel or an English muffin. And this is a little bit more cost effective to do it at home, because you can actually make these ahead and freeze them. I said it. I said the F word. I said freeze. So you can freeze these eggs. And what I do is I actually cut it into 4 and freeze them individually, put them into an airtight container, and then just pull out one at a time. And then I make the sandwich in the morning. Now, for some people, it might be easier just to create the whole sandwich and then tuck it away in the freezer and pull it out. But do remember to pull it out the night before so it has time to thaw slowly and you don't get a lot of the water kind of leaching out of it in the morning. Which brings me to talk about these bagels. Not really a side, that wasn't really a good segue, but kind of. Check the ingredient list. And we talk about this often with all ingredients, especially if you're looking kind of for protein and calcium in there. It's on that nutrition fact label. So here, I just wanted to, for one bagel, I scrolled down. See how I said scroll? That was crazy, Tracie. I said scroll, and it's my eyes and my finger. 75 milligrams of calcium for one bagel. Okay, so this is where what you eat throughout the day adds up. And that's how, when you look at the serving of calcium per serving, we're taking bagel, we're taking into account the egg mixture, and we're adding some ham, and we're also adding some cream cheese. So sesame bagels, I love sesame bagels. I like that little bit of crunch, not always, but it is a wonderful texture as well. So you can toast this if you want. I actually don't always like my bagels toasted. So this is a nice soft bagel that I'm gonna add some herbed cream cheese to. So herbed cream cheese typically has a little bit of herbs, sometimes garlic, sometimes not. And you don't need very much on here, but I just like to spread about a tablespoon across this both sides. So it's going to add also a little bit of flavor, which is really nice, just like that. Now, if you're not a fan of cream cheese or you don't use cream cheese very often, you could again use that Gouda that we put on the inside of our egg mixture. You can put it as a slice, or if you wanted to shred some more, you could actually stir it into some cream cheese and spread that mixture. That would be absolutely delicious. You could also, if you wanted the soft cheese element of it, but you wanted to increase your calcium a little bit, you could use something like ricotta cheese on here. It would be absolutely delicious. And you can stir in a little bit more fresh herbs. You could also use something like pork or labneh on here if you wanted to, and add some fresh herbs so you get that nice hit of flavor. So again, you can really create this. This is kind of like at a basic level maybe for some people, and then you can just bump it up with flavor on each level. So here's where we're adding another element of flavor, a little bit of ham. I love green eggs and ham. So that is why we're adding the ham, but you could also use a slice of smoked turkey, some sausage if you wanted to. What if you happen to have some leftover roast chicken? You could enjoy that, a little bit of roast chicken in here, and that again bumps up your protein here and creates this lovely little sandwich. So what you would do, I'm gonna just go back to the freezing component of it for a moment. I would take this, wrap it in plastic wrap. You could overwrap it in foil if you want, or if you're just gonna put it into a container that goes into the freezer, you can just pop it into the freezer. And then the night before you need it, take it out, let it thaw in the fridge, and then you can pop it in the microwave if you want on your way out, or put it in an air fryer or a little toaster oven to warm it through. And then you have breakfast on the go. The one thing I do recommend with this, it's kind of big, cut it in half. It's a little bit easier to enjoy. Are there any other questions, Tracie?
That looks great. That looks great. Now, I wanted to kind of talk about a couple of things. And, you know, Emily, we're not going to let her, she sacrifices herself for the taste test, but we're not going to have her do it just yet. I wanted to talk a little bit about, let's reduce some food waste. So we've already kind of given some options, but let's say we're looking at what's in our refrigerator. And if you don't have milk, sometimes I have some coffee cream and I'll use that instead. Or to Emily's point, if you don't have, like, whatever cheese you have, you can kind of toss it in there. If you have whatever vegetables, any leftovers. So like often, don't freshly roast potatoes. You can just take whatever's from dinner the night before and toss it in. I mean, this is what's so great about this. eggs are so accessible. This is such a versatile meal. And we like to also chat about, we don't always need to have a formal dinner where you have a dinner plate and a salad plate and you have, whatever it is that you're going to eat. Make a sandwich. Sandwiches are great. And sometimes we're just really busy. And I don't know about anyone else, but sometimes we don't make good choices when we're hangry and we go through the drive-through. These are easy. You leave the eggs in the fridge. I often do this. I will make a dish like this for the week. And then these are my on-the-go lunches. I did put in the chat. So we have make your own bagels. I know everyone's going, seriously, now you want us to make bagels. No, really and truly, it's really easy. It's a very simple recipe using Greek yogurt and flour and a very few other recipe ingredient items. I've popped that into the chat should you wish to do that. But this is all about convenience, nutrition, and there's so many variables. Like I love avocado on my eggs. So maybe instead of cream cheese, I would put, if I had a ripe avocado, I would put that on there. And that's, I mean, Emily, like these are recipes that we love because we want to help people make sure that we're not wasting food and it's delicious and nutritious and accessible.
It is totally. And I think the one thing that we also have to remember is that if you have a smaller household or a larger household,
absolutely,
eggs really fit the bill for everybody. So let's say you're just 2 at home or maybe even 1, you can take the rest of these 3 and pop them in the freezer on their own, and then you can enjoy them later in the week. Or maybe you're meeting someone at the park on the weekend and you want to bring sandwiches. This is just gives you a nice option for that. And they're filling. That's the great part, is that we kind of think, we know that eggs are kind of simple. They, in the sense that they're easy to make, which is fabulous, but they're also fast and filling and nutritious. So that's what makes them kind of wanted by people like me, by people like you, and chefs
absolutely.
Around.
Well,
so
and
it is fabulous. It is fabulous to have them in the fridge. I don't think I ever not have eggs. They're always on the list because they're just in constant rotation at my house.
Yes, and we did get someone who just asked a question, but just before I get to that question, so like, look at the vegetables you have. I've been telling Emily, we have so many like zucchini from the garden, thankfully, but sometimes they grow too large and they're not as tender. So I just grate them on a box grater or slice them very thin and I throw them in eggs all the time. So that's still, you get my green eggs and ham, but also like you're adding a vegetable to your meal, right? You can do that with,
if you want it. Oh, definitely. And if you wanted to, like even like peppers, right now there's people that have a lot of peppers in the garden that are ready to be picked. Tomatoes is another one that if you wanted to add a little bit of juiciness, instead of the ham, you could add some fresh garden tomatoes, a slice on top. Be careful, you'll drip down the sides, but it'll be absolutely delicious because eggs and tomatoes are a classic combination that so many people enjoy.
So there's an interesting comment, kind of a question. So someone asked, because this is hot out of the oven. So if you put it in the refrigerator, aside from egg salad, are cold eggs delicious? I can tell you when I make this, I will eat it in a sandwich cold. Well, I mean, room temperature, and it's fine. It's delicious. Yeah. But I mean, it's personal preference. If you don't like it, then, you may not want to do it. If you wanted to, and let's say you really like cheese, you could like sprinkle some on top, right, Emily, and pop it in like when you bake it. So you get that kind of cheesy crust. Somebody actually did say they're excited about the bagel recipe. So yay. That's good. That's really
good to hear.
But we do have a question. So let's say this is with large eggs, right?
Yes.
So let's say you only have small or medium eggs at home. How would you compensate because you would need to add more, right?
You would need a little bit more. So typically at medium eggs, if I had medium eggs at home for this recipe that calls for 6, I would add about 2 more. So I'd use 8 medium eggs. And it's really just about the volume at that point. If I was making a cake, it'd be a little bit of a different story because the eggs are there doing a few different jobs, right? They're creating structure. They're also sometimes creating height. So it doesn't always, it's definitely the amount of volume of yolk to white in the case, but in this case, because it's really just about the volume of egg mixture itself, 2 medium eggs additional to the 6 kind of balances it out. For small eggs, I think you would need almost 3 to 4. And if you had like jumbo or the extra large eggs, or sometimes people buy the double yolk eggs, they tend to be a little bit larger too. Those you could use 6 eggs, you'll just end up with a larger egg volume, that's all. So if you wanted to balance it out with a little bit more spinach or cheese, or maybe you just want to have that thicker egg layer, which is absolutely fine, it'd be absolutely delicious.
Absolutely. We have, let me just see here. We have actually a question. Oh, here's a great thing. Somebody asked, like, what if they just wanted to use egg whites? Would it change the nutrition?
It would, because
Yes.
the yolk is not there. So it definitely would change the nutrition. It would also change the color because the yolk isn't there. So you don't get that kind of golden hue. And the texture is a little bit different too. So the fatty richness is the yolk. So that is really kind of that wonderful mouthfeel that a lot of people enjoy about eggs. So, and I understand, you know, sometimes we want to use all egg whites, and in this recipe, you totally could. You would need a few more egg whites, because taking out those yolks changes the volume of the eggs. Or if you're using the pasteurized egg containers, the egg whites, you could measure out, they give you the volume, but maybe add about enough for 8 eggs as opposed to 6, so that you get that volume difference. And then the texture will be lighter, but a little, also I find in the oven it tends to be a little drier because you're missing out that the yolk, which provides that, as I said, that fatty richness.
Absolutely. And we have like one more question, and then Emily's going to take that bite for all of us. So, and it's actually about cheese. So somebody asked if, you know, the pre-grated cheese, and again, personal preference, convenience, whatever it is that works for you, but the difference, you know, would it be better to hand grate your own cheese versus the pre-shredded stuff? This is not my question, Emily.
This is actually,
this is somebody else's question. Yes.
This is a question that comes up, believe it or not, when I'm at the photo studio,
yes.
food styling, and things like that, because it stays shredded. And if you look at the ingredient list, I don't have any right now. I do buy it because it is very convenient. It's coated. I don't remember what it's called, but you'll see it sometimes, that little bit of, it almost looks like flour or cornstarch, so that it stays separated, which means that it doesn't always melt as fluidly as grated cheese that you grate yourself. So in photography, you want that beautiful golden look, and you want it to be nice and melty and oozy. So the preference is always to use cheese that you grate yourself, because it doesn't, if you've seen a photo where it looks like a strip of cheese has melted, that's shredded. It's typically pre-shredded cheese because it just kind of keeps its shape. But in this recipe, you could use pre-shredded or grate your own. What the variety you get when you grate your own is much bigger. That's the main difference. So I have yet to see grated Gouda that you could, like pre-grated Gouda. So if you love the flavor of Gouda, you will have to grate your own. But things like cheddar, mozzarella, even the double cheddars, those types of things, Tex-Mex, jalapeno, any of those would work in this recipe, and any of those pre-shredded or shredded cheeses would work well here. So that's really the only difference. I've used them in soups to melt. I'm trying to think what I used yesterday when I made cheesy eggs. I think I had to grate the cheddar. I didn't have any more pre-grated cheddar, but it does melt. So it is real cheese. So it does provide that that consistency, that comfort level of melty, gooey cheese that it provides.
Great. And okay, so we got one more question, but I'm still going to let you take a bite, because this is more about a question about freezer. Like, you know,
Okay.
Not everybody has an extra one in the basement. You know,
very true.
Not all of us have one. But I will just share this, you know, the individual and the person, Nancy. Hi, Nancy. Nancy's on lots of webinars with us. You know, kind of some tips when you have limited space. I'm going to give you my suggestion, and then Emily, I'm going to send it to you because I actually do this periodically. I love freezing everything and anything that I can so that I can have it on hand, but also so that I don't have to eat the same meal 4 nights in a row. I can kind of make a batch and then save it for when I need it. And sometimes you kind of need to go, okay, I filled the freezer, and then I go into, these are the meals for the week. And I'm like looking at the freezer going, this is what's coming out. And I add some fresh ingredients because you also, as I've done, don't want to leave it in for about a year or so and then realize it's not that delicious when you defrost it. And that's wasteful. And we don't want to do that. So it's really about, the staples like soup, stock, sauces, big amounts of protein. Like if you're going to do that, then you have those things on hand. And then when things are in season, like let's say the herbs, like I've frozen herbs and, whole tomatoes when they're too ripe and I don't have any time to cook them, wash them and throw them in a resealable bag and pop them in, all about helping me get what I need later on. I mean, Emily, what do you think?
I agree with everything that you've said. I do have some freezer space that I fill up often, but it's also about kind of how you pack that freezer, so that things are visible first and foremost. Because as I mentioned, even in your fridge, things can get tucked away in the back there, and who knows, when you'll find them. But if you look at how you stack them, Ziploc bags or sealable bags, they're flat. So in this case, this is flat. I wouldn't stack these. I would lay them flat in a resealable bag and freeze them flat so that you can actually stack things in the freezer. Make sure that they're labeled so that you know what it is, in case they are in there a little bit too long, and then they're dusted with a little bit of ice, so you don't necessarily know what you're looking for. So those kind of things really help. I guess it's been 20 minutes. My timer's going off.
Oh my goodness. I didn't hear the timer either. It's
And
okay if you like it a little crispier.
Well, I'll just pull it out here to show you how it comes out puffy initially. So when you touch it, it's firm on top. And then that little tip I gave you about taking the knife and inserting it in the center, and it comes out clean. Okay. So it's done. If you do want it a little bit more golden, you can definitely leave it in for a few more minutes, but this is hot and ready for the freezer because I get to pack them up and then send them with my son when he goes back.
Absolutely. Well, this has been great. And thank you so much. I just love recipes like this. I'm going to, who won the apron? Well,
oh yeah.
Well, Emily, I know, right? Like so much about this. So Ramona Slodovnik, I hope I pronounced your last name correctly, from Montreal, Quebec. Congratulations. We will reach out to you. We will ship you that apron. I just want to think, how is it, Emily? It's all good, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
That's good. I know it's delicious. I can't wait to go make some. We just want to thank everyone for coming on to the webinar today. We have more new recipes, so please visit the website. All different kinds for all different meals, all to help you. You don't have to follow it exactly. Make it work for you. And also, we have, of course, our Calculate Your Calcium tool, our podcasts, our blog. Yesterday, we had a webinar on nutrition, mental health, and bone health, and it's up on the OC Replay webpage because we have, in fact, recorded this one, and it will be available within the next day or so as well. So you can get that all on osteoporosis.ca. And again, thank you to our partners, Get Cracking, because without our partners, we can do more with our partners, I should say. So thank you for helping us get programming like this up. And of course, to Emily for always helping us do more. And if you want to get invitations, if you're not already getting information, updates about upcoming webinars and information on bone health and osteoporosis, just go to the homepage of our website, go to the subscribe button, subscribe to our newsletters. And we're on Instagram and Facebook and a variety of other social platforms, but those are the two main ones. just to see what we're able to do and post it. You can also get access from there. But overall, thank you. Thank you so much for supporting our Cook with OC program. Happy cooking, and we will see you on our next webinar. Have a wonderful day, everyone. Bye, Emily. Thank you.
Bye, Tracie. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.